Hi, CNT125. We are doing the Subnetting Application Lab. This first podcast, we're going to go through the subnetting as well as the network map to get our plan together to actually configure the network and make it work. What we are going to do is we are going to subnet the network they give us, do all the numbers here, and then we're going to apply that to our own network map, the own IP scheme that we want to use on our own network map, and then we are going to configure that and make that work. So we're going to plan and configure and make work our own subnetted IP network is what we're going to do. All right, so as I take a look at this network map, we have two routers, two switches. This is a network, this is a network, this is a network. So we are going to need three networks or three subnets for this network that we're going to configure. So right off the bat up here, one of the first questions is we are going to need three subnets. So let me start making doing some markups here. I'm going to try to make this blue so it stands out. We're going to need three subnets. So to do that, to do three subnets, we can borrow either 2 bits or 3 bits. Let's just borrow 2 bits for this example. We'll do 2 bits. So 2 bits borrowed, 2 x to the y2 is going to give us 4 subnets. So we will have at least one left over. I'll do subnet there. We'll do subnet. There's 16 bits here to work with. We're using 2 of them, so there's 14 bits left. So right here, 2x to the y 14 is going to give us, all right, let's do our quick, we'll pull up our calculator here. If we go to scientific, here we go, we can do 2x to the y 14 will give us 16,384. We are going to have 16,384 addresses per subnet, of which 16,382 will be usable. Well, our default subnet mask for this 172, the default subnet mask, this is essentially a class B. So 255.255.0.0. So again, the default /16. We are going to borrow 2 bits, so this will become /18. And over here, we're borrowing 2 bits in this octet, so 1, 2, that would be that octet right there. This would be the octet with 2 bits borrowed. So 2 bits borrowed here is 128 plus 64. That'll give us 192. So our subnet mask will become that, a /18 or 255.255.192. That'll be our subnet mask for our whole network. That'll be the subnet mask for the whole network. So with 2 bits borrowed, here in the third octet, so 2 bits borrowed, there is the third octet, this octet right here. Since we're borrowing these 2 bits, this is the interesting bit. This is the 64 place. So our subnets are going to go up by a factor of 64. So first subnet 0, next subnet 64, 128, 192. If we take 192, let's do a clear here, 192 plus 64, we are going to get 256. That is beyond the 8 bits. So that is all the higher we need to go, and that makes sense because there should be our 4 subnets right there. Well, if this one starts at 0, this one's 64, this first one has to end at 63. This next one needs to end at 127. This one needs to end at 191, and the last one will end at 255. Now, this is the third octet. This is the third octet that we worked with right here. So we now need to tag on the 4th octet for the subnet number. And hopefully the subnet number will remember all zeros in the host portion. So to do that, we're just going to tag on the 4th octet 0. So these will become the 4th octet dot 0. That is adding the, back there, that is now counting for that 4th octet. So those will be my subnet numbers. My broadcasts, hopefully remember, is all 1s in host portion. So to add all 1s over here, dot 255. Because 255, if you remember, is That right there, that's all ones. All ones in the host portion is 255. So I can, for this column for the broadcast, tag on 255. So there is my subnets and my broadcasts. The usables will be in the middle. So here, remember think of like the odometer in your car. The far right number will increment by 1. So it's this octet that will increment by 1. So my usables will be, let me come over here a little bit. There we go. 0.1. That'll be the first usable. Here would be 64.1. Here would be 128.1. And here would be 192.1. And remember, we have just been focusing on these octets where subnetting occurred. The real number, the whole number, is actually going to be 172.16.0.1. 172, let me get back up there. 172.16.64.1. Oh my goodness. 172.16.64.1. And this will really be 172.16.128.1 and 172.16.192.1. That's really the IP address. We were just focusing on the subnetted octets over here. The last usable will be 1 less than. So take this octet and we'll drive backwards a mile. Again, don't do that for real, but that's the gist. So 255, we would subtract 1 from that. So we would have 172.16.63.254. Here, 172.16.127.254. Again, drive 1 mile backwards, if you will. Again, don't do that. 191.254. And last one down here, 172.16.255.254. So there is my usable host ranges. Now I'm going to save my, I've been saving this as markup. So I'm going to save my markups here so I don't lose it. I now have all my numbers I need to be able to do my map. This next page here is all the written directions on how to do it. I'm just going to work down through these as I have them written here. What I want to do first is I want to label my networks, just like I'd be labeling streets in a town. I'm going to label my networks. This is just a label, just like putting a street sign up. This is Main Street, Elm Street, Oak Street. It's just simply a label. But I'm going to label my networks with the subnet number. So I'm going to label these. Let me see if I can sneak this in here. I'll do it right above. 172.16. The first one was 0.0. That's the first one that I have on my chart up here. 0.0 and then 64.0, 128.0. Okay? So I will do 0.0 for the first one. I'll say 172.16, 64.0 for the next one. And 172.16, we have 128.0 for the last one. Those are my 3 subnets. That helps me now. Any numbers on that network need to come from that subnet. Any networks on this network, any numbers on this network need to come from this subnet. Any numbers on this network need to come from this subnet, and so forth. That's what that helps me do. So now I can start assigning router, switch, and workstation addresses. In this case, this router port, this switch port, the switch IP, and the workstation IPs all need to come from this network. So up here on this router, this will be the 2011. Let's make this the Fast Ethernet 0/0 port. And then we'll make this one up here, Fast Ethernet 0/1. Those are the 2 ports on the 2011. So we'll make this 0 and this 1. The IP on this guy now can be 172.16.0.1. I typically make the router the very, very first usable. Something like my switch would be next usable. Subnet mask 255, 255, 192.0. That is the subnet mask we set up here. That's the one we set up here. We're going to use that for our whole subnetted network. There it is right there. So now the switch would get the next usable IP, 172.16.0.2 with subnet mask 255, 255, 192.0. And then workstations and nodes would get numbers next in line. Now, I typically leave a small gap, so I would have other numbers for like printers and servers and access points. So down here, I think I'll jump down to 172.16.0.10. I'll just jump up to 10, so I save a couple numbers there. 255, 255, 192.0. The default gateway address, that is the router port it's attached to. So what I will do to get that number is I will trace this line up. This computer is attached to this switch. All right. This switch is attached to this router. This is the router port right there. That is your default gateway address. It's the router port it's attached to. So the default gateway will be 172.16.0.1. Okay. So the default gateway 172.16.0.1. This needs to be correct, or this traffic from this computer will not get out of this network. It won't be able to get to anything else. That needs to be correct. So that's why I say it's the router port you're attached to and trace it through. This number right there. The first router port it hits is this one right there. Okay? So that is that side of the network. Let's go to this up here. We said this router port will be fast Ethernet 0.1. Over here on this router, they have gigabit 0.0.0 and 0.0.1. Well, let's keep it kind of standard. Let's make this one 1, 0.0.1 up here, and we'll make this 0.0.0 here. That way we have the zeros on the LAN side and the ones on the WAN side, just to have some sort of organization. Well, these two numbers need to come from this subnet. So 172.16.64.1, subnet mask 255.255.192.0. And this one will be the next one in line, 172.16.64.2. Don't conflict. Don't conflict. We need unique numbers for each one. 255.255.192.0. That network's done. Yeah, it's kind of wasteful to have a whole subnet allocated and we're using just 2 IPs. There's better ways to do that. Your variable length subnet mask will be a better way to do that. That's something we'll do down the road. Over here, we already said this is gigabit 0.0.0. This router port IP needs to come from this subnet now, because that's the one it's attached to. So this one will be 172.16.128.1, the first usable. Subnet mask 255.255.192.0. This switch port will be next in line, or this switch 172.16.128.2, 255.255.192.0. And last but not least, the PC down here, like we said, let's jump up, and I'll do .10. That way I'm saving a couple IPs for other stuff, for other devices. 255.255.192.0. And the default gateway for this guy, follow it up, right there. I'm attached to this router port right there. Okay, the 128.1. So 172.16.128.1. That is the default gateway for that PC. All right, there is your subnetting and your IP scheme on your network map. I would save that or keep that handy. You might want to print that out and bring that with you to the lab room. You might want to print that out and bring it to the lab room so you have that scheme to work with. Next podcast, we'll start connecting our devices to configure them.